Hi folks, hope you are okay today. I just want to ask the question, is presuppositional apologetics valuable? Now, on the skeptical community, there are a number of skeptics out there who basically are attacking people like Bible Thumping Wingnut and Matthew 14, and they're attacking them and citing Brugengate and all the rest, and they're attacking them and saying that this presuppositionalism is intellectually dishonest, and we have to call it out. And basically, there's these massive attacks that have gone on and continue to go on against Satan Brugengate and against Matthew 14 and Bible Thumping Wingnut and a number of other younger presuppositionalists who are following their school. And a couple of examples is Ozzy, who's become quite well known concerning this in his critique of presuppositionalism. People like Jim Gardner, who's recently done a video critiquing this popular presuppositionalism, etc. Now, I just want to say some things here. Is presuppositional apologetics valuable? And the answer to that is yes. And the reason is simply this. Is because whatever the skeptical position is, and it's often kind of this, your position is not credible unless you have scientific evidence. So let's just take that. So Jim Gardner and people like that will say your position is not intellectually credible because you have not got scientific evidence, because scientific evidence is the key, the main thing, and if you haven't got that, you're just being obscurantist, intellectually dishonest. But the problem is with that position is Jim Gardner will have beliefs that he cannot back up scientifically. So even in his scientific method, there are philosophical presuppositions that you cannot prove scientifically. So this argument that you've got to provide scientific evidence for your beliefs, and if you don't, it's not worth bothering about, is intellectually dishonest and implodes upon itself because that position has intellectual beliefs that it can't verify scientifically. And so the value of presuppositional apologetics is to get the unbeliever to face the fact that there are foundational beliefs within any system that we have to assume before we actually get to any evidential information. The other issue is the rise of postmodernism has shown, and because of Kant's philosophy and the rise of postmodernism, people are now more astute and clued up that we all come with bias, and presuppositional apologetics gets us to face our bias. It's kind of like these tomatoes here. If my eyes are coloured red, I'm only going to see red. But if these are off, I can see perfectly fine. But we all see with our various worldview glasses, and we all have our worldview position, and we look at evidence from our worldview. And presuppositional apologetics gets us to basically examine these worldviews of how they're colouring the evidence. And what we try to do is critique these worldviews with their coloured glasses and try to get them to see that that's how they are seeing. They're seeing from their own perspective. Now, purely on those two bases, the need to examine our own foundations that we cannot prove, the fact that we all have bias, shows you that presuppositional apologetics is valuable. And I think the reason why the atheist community hate presuppositional apologetics is because it isn't going their way. They don't want to talk about these foundational issues. Christianity has been talking about these foundational issues for a long time, even before Cornelius Van Til. But the atheists don't want to talk about these things, and it annoys them that they have to. Now, they bring in people like Gary Edwards, Jim Gardner, Ozzy, and people like that. Some of these people are highly intelligent, highly sophisticated, and they're able to bring in big, long-sounded words with a bit of philosophical training that they might had at postgraduate level, maybe at MA level or something like that. And they bring in these long-sounded words, and they're able to discourse on epistemology and the theory of knowledge. And they give the impression that they've given the answers to these deep philosophical questions. And the issue is they haven't. They simply have not grappled with the issues. And here's the point, because every time they engage with people like Matthew 14 and Bible Thumping Wingnut and Seitan Brugengate, very often they lose the debates on these topics because the very simple issues they've not grasped. Now, they might try to hoodwink with complex questions and complex arguments, but the basic questions and the basic foundations that these people are coming out with, Bible Thumping Wingnut, Matthew 14, are stumping the atheists, because the atheists know that they can't get round some of these issues. The argument from logic, for example, that is logic the basic foundation of logic, is it subjective or objective, is not an easy question to answer. And the atheists know this, and they hate the fact that they have to go over the issue. And then it exposes their weaknesses. And people like Ozzy can try to get them out of it by talking big language and as if he knows the subject. But these basic facts, they just can't get out of. And they're getting away with coming up with big sounding words, and at the end of the day they're not dealing with the issues. Now, on the other side, Matthew 14 and Bible Thumping Wingnut and Seitan Brugengate, they're not trained philosophers, and they're doing their best as the way they see it. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying that they don't make mistakes. I'm not saying that they do have to engage with people, listen to people where they're at. I think sometimes that can be lost sight of at times because the methodology takes over. So I'm not saying that they're perfect. I'm not saying that they've got everything dialed out. But what I am saying, even at a popular level, presuppositional apologetics is valuable. But on a more sophisticated philosophical level, it's absolutely essential that we look not only at the evidence but also at the presuppositional aspect as well. So all knowledge has two parts. It has presuppositions and it has evidential information, and we have to engage with both sides. Kant tried to do the same. He was dealing with the dogmatist that he called dogmatist, but we would say rationalist. Well, he was dealing with a rationalist, and he was dealing with the empiricist, and he tried to hold a balance between dealing with presuppositions and empiricism. And today we have modernism and postmodernism, which are two sides of the same debate. But the skeptic, here's the point, the skeptics like Jim Gardner. And I want to ask you a question, Jim Gardner, and I want you to answer it, please. Is there anything in your position, when you're critiquing Bible Thumping Wingnut and Matthew 14 and Seitan Brugengate, and I asked this to Matt Delonte and I asked this to you, but you specifically, I want you to answer this question. Is there anything in your worldview, I know you don't like the worldview as atheists, so is there anything in your position, anything, that is foundational to your position that you can't prove evidentially? And if there is, that's why we need to talk about presuppositions. And it's not intellectually dishonest. It's intellectually dishonest and disingenuous of you to not be willing to face the fact that you have foundational positions that you cannot prove evidentially. Thereby, that's why we talk about presuppositional apologetics. Alright? Now, there is this thing going around today that I mean, it was said by Gary Edwards, which shows his lack of sophistication in philosophy. But he said of me that I used presuppositionalism and evidentialism, and he said you can't do that. He obviously doesn't know much about Christianity or Christian apologetics. Francis Schaeffer, who studied under Cornelius Van Til, used presuppositionalism and evidentialism together. Right? So that's checkmate, Gary Edwards. Now, there is this idea that presuppositionalism is against evidences, and that's not the case. Even Bible Thumping Wingnut, even Matthew 14 and Seitan Brudengate believe in evidences. But because of the way they understand theology and Calvinism and Calvinistic theology, and their understanding of human reasoning and how it's been corrupted, they don't want to start engaging in evidences to people who really are not really wanting evidences, but they just want to pull Christianity down. So what they're doing is holding you to the ground and saying, okay, you want to pull Christianity down? But you're saying we need to provide evidences. Well, you're holding to positions that are not evidential. So they have a right to pull you to the side and hold you down if you're being arrogant and proud and not being intellectually honest about your own position. They have a complete right to do that. Now, sometimes they might do it when a person wants to openly discuss and debate, and they will then provide evidences. But generally speaking, if you're going to come as arrogant and try to be cocky and say, we want evidences and you're just a disgrace, they're going to hold you to the core and say, you want evidences? Let's talk about your presuppositions. And they're going to hold you down. So it comes also from your perspective that you've got to approach debate and discussion in a humble, gracious way. And very often the skeptics on the internet are like bull in a china shop, or they're like a bunch of kids on acid or something like that. They're just running around being aggressive. And if you're going to come with that attitude, they're going to humble you by showing you that your position is not evidential, which you're claiming it is. So what I would suggest to you to do is that you realize that presuppositional apologetics is valuable, and that it doesn't necessarily mean evidences are not provided. Evidences can be provided. Even Cornelius Van Til said, if anybody comes to him and asking questions and wants evidences, he'll go and take them for a coffee and he'll talk with them. Francis Schaeffer often talked with people at L'Abri and gave people evidences. But we also will hold you to the call and talk about presuppositions. And this is the issue. People like Ozzy and people like yourself, Jim, can talk blue in the face. Ozzy can get out of it by talking all this complex philosophical language that he talks about, but at the end of the day, the basic questions of presuppositionalism he has not answered. He's getting away with it because he's using high-flown language and seems to know a little bit about epistemology, but he is in no way dealt with some of the basic questions that presuppositionalism is asking the skeptic. And the skeptic has not dealt with those issues. Now, you might come back and say, well, all this is based on the fact that your position is revelational. It all presumes that the Bible is revelational. Well, you can do presuppositional apologetics and not assume that the Bible is true. You can. The whole idea of presuppositional apologetics is that you have to presuppose God as a necessary condition for reason. And you don't need the Bible to get to that position. You cannot think, you cannot have reason without the necessary condition of a belief in God. If you try to do that, you'll end up making reason irrational. You'll end up making reason reason loses its rationality when it's cut off from faith. If you don't believe me, go and have a look at my last two videos on logical positivism and the Enlightenment and the history of Oxford philosophy. Alright, thank you for listening and take care.